Thank you, Dr. Foster, and thank you all for being here. So we're here for my final presentation. Why are we here? So many of you that are familiar with the FFA have heard the chapter president or the state president, whoever, say, why are we here? And then you hear the gavel tap and everyone rises and responds with the statement of the FFA. So while this is not an FFA meeting, and I don't plan to run an FFA meeting right now, I wanted to address that because it is something that's special in my life of being an FFA and having that experience. So why are we here? To hear about me, talk about the way I've taken advantage of opportunities for my student teaching experience and how I am prepared to student teach and eventually graduate and become a teacher myself. So some of the things I'll be talking about today are my teaching philosophy, the integration of curriculum, FFA, and SAE, evidence of my abilities, my educational opportunities and experiences, overview of my cooperating center at Greenwood, and goals of student teaching. So my teaching philosophy. So in your packets you can see some of the little infographics of my teaching philosophy. But to narrow it down, I picked up a couple bullets from there. One, I want to create a comfortable learning environment for students. I'm sure we've all sat in classrooms where we felt like we weren't comfortable learning and we weren't comfortable asking questions. And I want my students to be able to ask those questions and to not feel like they're being judged in any way. Student driven. I want students to want to learn, and I think aspiring to be an educator, I should say. I enjoy learning, so I want them to feel that same way. Balance is probably one of the biggest things that I can think of as far as my teaching philosophy, and I think that can touch on to many different things, and one of those just being a balance of student challenges versus that teacher facilitation, and I want to make sure that I'm helping out, but I'm also giving them that room to improve and room to learn. 21st century skills, as some of you know, are those they might call the soft skills, where it's about communication skills and things like that. So I want my students to develop that, and I think those are so important. Even in the more hands-on lab classes, I want to make sure I'm integrating that in any way possible. And lifelong learner, I consider myself to be a lifelong learner, and just like the comfortable learning environment bullet there, I hope my students are lifelong learners as well. I think that's so important for them to see that even if they're not in a physical classroom, they're still learning and growing all the time. So that's a little bit about my teaching philosophy. Integration of curriculum, FFA, and SAE. So in my classrooms, I try to incorporate a bunch of labs and different hands-on experiences, but I also have some lectures and things like that too to incorporate in there, and to get students thinking about things in different ways. And the one thing that I tried to think about while I was planning my lessons and units was how can I differentiate this? So maybe one day we're doing something more visual for those visual learners, and another day we're doing something a little more hands-on. So one of the hands-on projects that I'm going to be teaching is a welding project. And while I'm not the best or most skilled in welding, I made this little name plaque for myself with Kane is my last name, so I put that in there. So students will be able to make it, obviously, with their own names. And I kind of, in my plans for that, I let it up to them to, do someone else's name or do like a love or something cheesy like that. And they'll get practice with different skills in welding in that area. SAE, as far as that goes, I would just help to do visits and things like that and assist as needed. Some of the courses, it's integrated into the curriculum, so I'll be able to help with that. But otherwise, it's just as needed. And FFA leadership, the main things would be the local and state activities. So I know we'll be going to ACES and SLLC and a couple other regional things or local things. So I'll be able to help facilitate those and chaperone and put on my advisor tag, name badge for that. And also the officer team, I'll be able to help facilitate that in any way needed. Evidence of my abilities. So one of the things that we had to do was determine what area or what pedagogical area we are strongest in. And this is from my micro teaching lab where we go out to a different school for 3 days and teach a lesson to students. So it's not my cooperating center. But here's a little snippet of one of the areas that I feel I do well in. And it's the business-like or task-oriented, so I'll explain that a little afterwards. We got one more minute for the bell ringer. Class time. This is the bell works. This is right at the beginning. You know what we're doing? The bell works on the board?
I know what we're
Well, you can use your iPad. I found the answer on Oklahoma State's Department of Animal Sciences. That helps. Oklahoma State's. How could that be important? Why does anyone care how the red Angus grows? Anyone? What do you think? Yeah. Did everyone hear that? Did everybody catch that? No? So you want to repeat that really quickly?
Bird is attraction for love of food. The girl can raise more red Angus and supply more food to animals.
Yes. Yeah, so the pedagogical ability that I chose was business-like or task-oriented because being in a class, and that was a very large class as well, some of them were kind of talkative, some of them, there's a one-on-one program, which means that they have like individual technology like iPads, so they were all on their iPads, and most of them were pretty well on task, but there was a group all the way in the front of there, and one particular student, I guess I don't need to point out people, but that were off task and they were playing games on their iPad, so I had to make sure that they were putting it away. I had to ask the students to put their phone away, which they weren't even supposed to use their phone, they were supposed to use the iPad. And then that last example was some of the girls in the back were chatting and talking and they didn't hear the response of someone in the front of the room, so I just used one of the, I guess, the little teacher secrets where you walk around and you kind of make sure that they stop talking by your presence. So I think that was probably one of the things that I'm do pretty well at, which is business-like or task-oriented behaviors. So my ideal model of program curriculum, so this is something that if I were to have a school and to have a set curriculum or a set scope for my students, this is my ideal. So they would all start with an intro to agriculture course. They would move to either a plant science track, an animal science track, or an ag mechanics track. And then in their senior year, they would finish with an FFA leadership course. So they would all get the fundamentals of ag and then leadership and communication and things like that. But then they would get to choose which track they are more interested in. So recruitment, another thing that we were tasked to do was think of the recruitment way to present that to students and to get them interested in the FFA and the program as well. So I'll play a little snippet of the video for you.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Ryder. Welcome to Channel 6 News. Tonight, we're going to be sharing a story of survival. As you all know, 6 months ago, a horrible disaster struck many communities across the country. Tonight, we have members of the local agricultural education FFA chapter telling us how the skills they learned in ag education gave them what they needed to survive and improve their communities throughout the disaster. Going first to our FFA president, Miranda Kane.
So, Miranda, what was it that you learned in your agriculture education classes that made the difference for you?
So one thing that I gained was that I was chapter president this year, and I really learned the value of teamwork and cooperation and being able to work with other people. So I think that helps when we're going through this disaster, and just to be able to work effectively as a team to resolve the issue, and also just communicating and being able to talk effectively to people to solve the problem instead of like running around and not really knowing how to handle the situation. Another thing that was really cool was that being in the FFA, we faced a lot of challenges with our team, and of course they're small compared to the disaster that happened, but being able to know how to handle that stress was really helpful, and I think that helped to kind of keep a level head for myself and other people in my community and my family and friends, and being able to just like learn how to lead when I was in the FFA, and it helped to kind of figure out an action plan, and I was able to help out a little bit where I could with my community. So that really helps. The skills I learned in the FFA really helped.
Thanks, Miranda.
All right. I can definitely share that video with you if you want to watch the rest of that, but for now, we'll continue on. So the purpose of that video is to show how the skills that you learn in the program aren't just for the program. They're for outside of the program, and they're meant to enable students to take advantage of opportunities and to be better leaders outside of and in the community and outside of the community. So hopefully that was kind of a realistic news reporting of what it looks like to have and use those skills outside of the classroom. So the next thing that we had to do was the community-based unit of instruction. And what this basically is incorporating some sort of a service learning project of some sort into a unit of instruction or a course. And the one that my cooperating center and I came up with is something called PA One Stop, and it's actually run through, I believe it's run through Penn State, so it's kind of cool to integrate that. But basically what it is it's giving farmers a chance to learn how to use more conservative practices on their, or conservation practices on their farm, and to get them to plan that, and they'll go through, so well, I should start with what we're doing. So we'll get trained, myself and the students that are participating in that program, they'll get trained on how to train, and they'll go through the website, they'll go through the program and do that, and then we'll talk to farmers and we'll have them go through the, like, it's kind of like an application module type of setup. So they'll go through that and they'll learn how to incorporate conservation practices on their farming. They'll each make an individual plan as well for that. As far as grants go, I didn't look too much into grants, but the one that I know I've come across is the tractor supply grant, and that one is at minimum, it's $500. And what they do is they do a big fundraising event, and however much is the total, they'll split that between everyone that applied and how much they're requesting. So it could be 500, it could be more. But that would be a really great grant, and it also supports the FFA, or the tractor supply supports the FFA, so it would definitely be something that I think would be meaningful and purposeful for the Greenwood chapter. And here's just a picture of what the website kind of looks like, so they would go through that and do the mapping. Educational opportunities and experiences. So I've done quite a lot at Penn State, and I'm really proud of the 4 years that I put into my schooling here. Some of the key courses that I've had are, so I started at Penn State Berks, I was there for 2 years, and the first course I had was educational psychology, and I loved it. I had a really great teacher, and she explained a lot of theories and principles and things that I didn't know about before. That was my first exposure to it. And she just had really great stories that I was able to take with me, and I think that really helped me to kind of inspire me a little bit more to want to be a teacher. Because of course your freshman and sophomore years, you're still kind of figuring out what you want to do. The next course that I thought was a really key course for me was the International Agriculture course, which is here at Penn State, University Park. And that was taught by Dr. Dan Tobin. I actually have a little example of one of the assignments that I had to do that had a profound impact on me, so I'll pass it around. I'll have you guys pass it around. So what that is it's a $2 challenge, and it's basically a 3-day long challenge where you put yourself in the shoes of someone that lives in a developing country. And in developing countries, they might only live off of $2 a day, which is crazy, and especially being here in America, that's like impossible, because coffee is like $5, that's all you get to drink for the day. So we had to cut out a lot of things. We had to ration our meals. What I ended up doing was, instead of $2 each day, I just did $6 all at once, and then use that for the whole 3 days. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience, and learning more about global agriculture, which is something that it wasn't really talked about in my high school. It was very eye-opening. So I really hope to incorporate something like that. And even if I'm not doing a $2 challenge with my students, at least I can show them that it's really hard to put yourself in the shoes of other people and to get them into that global competency. One of the other key courses that I had was AE 412 with Dr. Foster. And I learned a lot about different theories and methods for teaching, and we all sat in that course and we were able to practice. And I think going through the labs and actually having myself stand up and talk, even if it was just my peers, having myself stand up and talk in front of them was like, it helped a lot to fill in those blanks and to see where my strengths and weaknesses are. And then we also did some other labs like the one you saw earlier about micro-teaching, where we go to a different school. And that is also a big eye-opener, but I think I definitely found my place. And I think if anything, it inspired me more to want to teach, because I love seeing students learning and understanding something. And even if they're not understanding, I love seeing that they're working towards that understanding. Penn State academics. So obviously my major is agricultural and extension education. I don't have any other majors, but I do have a minor. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the minor is Spanish, and that's not in the College of Ag, which is perhaps not traditional of many Ag Ed majors, Ag Ed students and graduates. But it's something that I was really passionate about, because just like my high school experience in Ag Ed, I had a really wonderful experience in Spanish in high school, and I loved my teachers there, and they inspired me. And I think knowing that now, I know how valuable it is to inspire my students. Maybe they won't become a teacher like me, but knowing that just by being a good teacher and caring about them, they can do wonders with their education. So, but I'll talk about Mexico a little bit later, but I studied abroad there this summer, a great global experience. Some of the other certifications and things you can see down there that we need, and one of them I'll highlight is the ServSafe certification. I'll be teaching food science in the spring, and I'm going to try to incorporate some of the different ServSafe certification criteria that's in that program into the curriculum. And we don't have it set in stone, but I know that my cooperating teachers and I mentioned maybe having a certification where the students will actually go through that certification. So that would be really cool to be able to do that with my students. Professional development, I won't read this whole list of stuff on here, but I've definitely done a lot in my time here at Penn State and outside of Penn State. Some of the more recent things are the Pennsylvania Association of Agriculture Educators, the PAAE. Some of us went to the conference over the summer, and we engaged in some workshops. Just recently, I went to Las Vegas, Nevada with the NAAE, and we did some other workshops and things there. I also participated in something called FAST, which is Future Agri-Science Teacher Symposium, and that was all for pre-service teachers like myself. We got to learn a little bit more about different things you can do, different theories, not so much the theories, but more the methods of teaching. So that was a really great time, and I definitely learned a lot. And if anything, I learned connections to other people and how much the ag community cares about that. I've also had a lot of work experience, as you can see, various different work experiences. And professional development. So while I was at Penn State Berks, I was involved in something called the Blue and White Society. And basically what this is it's kind of like a spirit club, but they do a lot of other things with that. So I was an officer in that, and I helped a lot with maybe revamping the officer team and helping to provide some different materials that I gained when I was an FFA. So one of them was the final reports that we did in high school, and that was something that was like, oh yeah, we have to submit a final report. And then I get to the Blue and White Society, and I'm like, yeah, we should submit a final report. So just things like that, that kind of jump in and touch in different parts of my life. Teach Ag Society, I was the president here this past year, just retired. Teach Ag Avenger, also just retired. Alpha Tau Alpha Honorary Fraternity, I was in that, and again, a Sigma Delta Honor Society as well. So, like I said earlier, I was going to get back to Mexico. So I wanted to touch on a little bit about my global experiences and some of the other things that I've done to help me prepare. So you see, this is a picture of myself in Puebla, in Mexico. In Puebla, that's the university that I studied at. I took 3 courses there, and I lived with a host family. So not only was I there to see the sites and to learn different things, but I really integrated myself into that family and that lifestyle. And I learned what it really looked like to live in Mexico, and to put away some of those preconceived different thoughts that people share here. So that was really eye-opening. At the top here, this is a picture of me with the Chester County 4-H Extension. I did an internship with them 2 summers ago, and the community was actually largely a Mexican and Hispanic community, and some other different ethnicities there. But that really gave me exposure to different diversities. Some of the families didn't speak English. Some of the children, so I was the only leader on that team that knew some Spanish at that point, and I still don't completely consider myself fluent. But I would talk to the students in Spanish and I would ask them questions and things. And that really, I think them seeing that I was trying, and I think they really appreciated that. And finally, this picture is from my just recent internship in the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. And I helped to facilitate and kind of do more administrative work for them, but I helped out at one of the workshops that they were putting on, so I got to experience that and sit in on the sessions as well as help facilitate it. So overview of Greenwood. Greenwood is a very small school in Pennsylvania. It's located in Perry County, PA. So not too far from here, but still far enough that it's a little out of my comfort zone. But it's a very strong school, very active school, and it has a lot of support from the administration, which is really positive in going into this program and knowing that I have a lot of support. My cooperating teachers, as mentioned earlier, are Mr. Clark and Mrs. Pontius, and they've both been teaching for, I think, 15 plus years, almost 20 years, if not. So they've had a lot of experience under their belt. They have an officer team, and they run a bunch of different programs in the FFA. And one of the more notable ones is their hunger banquet that they've been doing for a couple of years. So that they help to raise money for people that can't afford food and things like that in their community. So they're also very heavy on the agri-science. I think I should talk about that in a second. Yeah. So the agri-science, so they participate in like the agri-science fairs. They do a lot of hands-on projects, things like that with their students. It always amazes me how much they're able to do and how much their students are able to accomplish, and some of the things that I never even really had the opportunity to do. So I'm excited to see where they can go with that. So again, they're heavy on the agri-science. They also have a shop and greenhouse, and so I'll be working in their small gas engine shop as well as the welding shop, which are basically in the same building or the same room, the same department, but I'll be doing both that. And then they also have a greenhouse with a hydroponics and aquaponics system. They also rely on their community partners quite a bit, and you'll see them doing things like helping out at the fair and stuff like that. As far as 339 goes, they're pretty good on their 339 as far as their approved program planning. So they had some minor things that they needed to fix or include into their report for that. But otherwise, there wasn't anything too significant. They have an advisory committee, and other things like that. So they're pretty well on for that. And they've been able to improve on any of the little errors that they weren't qualified for before. So we're good with that. Courses to be taught. So I'll be teaching 7 different courses. I'll be teaching plant science for pretty much the entire time, and I'm really excited about that because it's something that I'm more familiar with and more comfortable with. I'll be teaching small gas engines, which that's something I'm not as comfortable with, but I'm excited to learn myself a little bit more about it and to see students learn and to engage them in that. I'll be teaching agri-science, and that's for the units that I'll be there for. It's public speaking and parliamentary procedure, but they also talk about, it's their intro to ag class, so they have a little bit of everything. I'll be teaching welding, where I'll be doing my little welding project with them, so I'm excited for them to practice that, and maybe they'll surpass my skills. And then animal science, after that, I'll be teaching about dairy, so we'll be making some cheese and milk and stuff, and I'm really excited for that. Next is food science. Again, a lot of hands-on labs with that unit. And the final one is leadership, and students will be doing kind of a range of different activities. It's not one specific topic that they'll be engaging in, but also very excited for that class and all of the classes that I will be teaching. So some of my goals to wrap up this presentation is adaptability, and I think knowing myself in maybe low pressure settings, I'm pretty adaptable and able to be flexible, but I know when it comes to things that really matter to me, I can get a little flustered and maybe not know how to handle that situation. If I have a one-track mind, if this is how I planned it and this is how it's going to go. So I know I'll need to be a little more adaptable and to know that sometimes things are going to happen in the classroom that I can't ever plan for, so I have to be aware of that. Risk boldly. So I mentioned that some of the courses that I'm maybe a little weaker in are small gas engines and welding, and I'm teaching both of those and a couple weeks worth of those courses. This goes for all of my courses, not just those two. But I hope to really risk boldly and try hard and challenge myself, and hopefully that reflects on my students and that they learn how to challenge themselves as well. Clarity. So I think probably one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is making sure that my instructions are clear and that students are able to understand what I'm saying and what I mean. And I think that'll come with the profession of working with that, but that's something that I would like to work towards. As far as goals for professionally, I hope to lead or at least facilitate some sort of an FFA event or event in general with Greenwood, and I hope to kind of take that on and learn what it really likes from the advisor's point of view of how to do that. And finally, attend an advisory meeting or professional development workshops as they come along in this semester. So I know there will be an advisory meeting in the spring while I'm there, so I'll be able to sit in on that. I don't know if all the professional development workshops available, but I know we will be here for Penn State for some of those. So I hope to take on as much as I can and make sure that I'm developing myself as much as possible. So thank you all for coming to my presentation. I hope you were able to gain a little something and learn a little something about me, and just know that I'm very excited to be at Greenwood, and I'm very inspired to teach agriculture one day to students. Thank you.
Sure, round of applause. Ms. Emick.
I know you touched on it a little bit, but how exactly are you going to utilize that Spanish minor being an ag educator?
Yeah, so I don't think I have, I mean, it's a very, I don't have a lot of diversity within my classrooms, let's say that. So I wouldn't be able to actually use the language itself, but I think I can incorporate it into almost any lesson or unit of instruction and say like, hey, you know, we're talking about crop production here, and you know, in Mexico, when I was there, I noticed this or I saw this. So I think in small ways I can incorporate that. And the other really unique thing, and like thinking about things like the hunger banquet and stuff, I think they are getting to that culturally aware aspect, but I think I can just share my experience from that and say like, hey, this is what I noticed, and you know, not everything is the same here in America as it is in other countries. So I hope to integrate that in little ways if possible. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ryder.
Thanks. So you mentioned a little bit about Chapter 339. Knowing what you know about what those standards kind of are for a program and what they need to maintain in order to receive that performance funding, what do you think that Greenwood does best? I know you talked about a little bit of some of the things that they kind of maybe need to work on, but what do you think they do best, just from what you've seen in personal experience and business events?
Yeah, so I think, and I kind of touched on it, I guess I didn't explain it too much, but they definitely have their community involved and their advisory committee and stuff involved. Which is really important for the program to not only know like industry standards, but to also just get input and continue updating their curriculum and stuff like that. So.
Mr. Cahill.
Ms. Kane, what strategies will you implement your first week teaching to make sure that students respect?
That's a good question. So I think just coming off from the start and like sharing my expectations with them. So I have these expectation posters over here. So I guess I can share these with you guys now. So I will start by sharing with them the procedures. So I'll have them mention I will mention to them to arrive on time. I think that's really important for students to make sure that they're developing those professional skills. Also to be prepared, prepared with materials and a smile. And I think not only just coming to class with your homework and your pencil and things ready, but to come to class ready to learn in a positive way. Clean up after yourself, classroom, shop, and workspace. So I'll be teaching in a variety of settings. I'll be teaching in shop classes as well as lecture classes or in the greenhouse or something like that. So just making sure that students are aware of, again, that professional responsibility of cleaning up after themselves and taking care of the program and the department. And be respectful to others and yourself. I think this is really key for students. Whether it's developing that global competency or learning just skills to better themselves and the community around them and to engage in learning in that positive environment. I want to make sure that my students are creating that environment. So you can also see some of the expectations that I have. And as far as consequences for that, I would start with a verbal warning, and I would pull the student aside and talk to them about some of the things that I've been noticing about their behavior. In reading one of our summer reading books for this course, I really was open. I learned a lot about how to handle some of those situations, and I still think I need to practice and learn more about it. But as far as the verbal warning part goes, I think it's important to make sure that the student understands where they went wrong, and to not embarrass them or to put them down, but to have them evaluate where they can improve. And then, of course, the next would be contact home or contact the family and get them to learn a little bit more about the situation going on and to maybe have them help to solve that problem. And then, if anything, hopefully it doesn't ever get to that point, but office referral would be the final stop for that. So, thank you.
Ms. King, we have a question from our online audience from your cooperating teacher, Mr. Clark. And he asked the question, what inspires you most, or excuse me, what excites you most about teaching at Greenwood?
Gosh, everything. So my first real experience with the students was National Convention. And of course I was a little worried because I really only knew one or two of the students there, and I knew Mr. Clark and Mrs. Pontius there. So I didn't know how they would take me or how they would respond, but they were so welcoming and so opening to me and willing to share and be involved with me and ask about what my journey and things like that. And I think seeing that and seeing how much they care about me, it definitely made me more excited to want to teach them. As far as in the classroom and with the students, I think the one thing I'm probably excited about, it would definitely be the hands-on learning part of it. And I wish I had more experiences with some of these labs and things because they're so neat and interesting, and I think it would get more students excited about agriculture, which is something that is really important to teach that mission of agriculture. So I'm really excited to be able to work through those labs with the students and to see that light bulb go off in their head and to engage them in that.
And there's a follow-up question, that what is going to be from Mr. Clark again, what will be the most challenging aspect of fulfilling your teaching philosophy that you've espoused upon today?
I think the most challenging part of that would probably come from the content knowledge. And I know a lot of teachers in the past have assuaged me that it'll be okay if you don't know everything right this moment because you'll learn as you go along, and being in professional development opportunities, you'll be able to learn more. But that is something that I want to make sure that I'm not shorting my students of an education, and I want to make sure that they're learning as much as they can and that I can provide that for them.
Thank you. Dr. Ewing?
I'll actually defer to Dr. Rice again, if that's all right.
Okay.
So Miranda, the last 15 weeks you've been a part of a cohort, and can you speak to your contribution to the success of your students?
Yeah, so being in a small cohort, I think we were able to meet and talk and help each other out and share things as needed. I was always willing to lend a hand or just answer a question for people, and I think just being there to support our cohort members was really valuable, and I think I offered that support very well to my cohort members. In addition to that, if they ever needed me to share something or send something, I was always willing to do that. I shared some of my lesson plans and units that I had finished, and I know they shared some with me. So I don't know who I'll use my lesson plans or units, but that's something that's definitely available, and I hope to be as open as possible to them as needed.
Is there a question from the audience? Kurt?
What specific lesson plan are you most excited to teach and why?
Ooh, okay. So I can't think of a specific lesson plan, but I'm doing a couple of labs in my food science class, and I've never done food science before except for one course here at Penn State. So I'm really excited to teach that. I'll be teaching, I'll be doing a canning lab, a dehydration lab, and I'm missing one off the top of my head. But yeah, a couple of labs like that, so I'm really excited to teach those.
Dr. Ewing?
So you mentioned Greenwood is very engaged in agri-science education, and I know they work a lot with the agri-science fair as well. How would you promote the agri-science fair to potential students that maybe have never heard about it before? I know you're not walking into that in your student teaching situation, but first year teaching, and maybe they've never done that. So how would you promote the agri-science fair to your students?
That's a good question. And I think it's hard for students if they haven't seen that before or if they're unfamiliar with it. But I think I would definitely show them examples, and I would show them the reward, and not just the physical reward that they would get from that, and not just the recognition from that, but I would show them what that application for that project. And I know so many students have done projects that are like really detailed and researched, and things that I don't think I've ever done when I was their age. And I think if I can inspire them to say, hey, you can do this. Someone else that's your age did this, a project just like this, or did something very similar. And I think that's kind of getting over that misconception of, oh, well, I'm only 15 or 16, so I can't do that. I think that'll be inspiring to them. So showing them some examples might help out with that.
Great.
Audience? Miranda, you mentioned this concept in your video of using your presence. Do you remember the actual term for that as a classroom management practice?
Ooh. I can't say I remember the term for it, no.
Anybody in the audience help out?
Proximity.
Pardon?
Proximity.
Control. I want you to talk to me, Miranda, and describe to me how you will purposefully evidence a growth mindset in your student teaching internship in spring.
Sure. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, so some of the content knowledge I'm a little shaky on, I definitely could use some more work with that and learning a little bit more about that, but I'm willing to learn. And I think knowing that one day I'll get there, and knowing that, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, I'll be a lot better off than where I am now, I think that kind of emphasizes that growth mindset, because I know that right now, I only have that experience as a student, and once I get done my student teaching, I know I'll have that experience as an educator. So being able to know that I can grow off of that, and not just say like, okay, well, I'm where I'm at now and I'm not going to change.
Building on that, tell me about a time when you failed and it was beneficial in how you reacted.
Yeah, so I'll talk about one of the labs that we did here this semester, and it was inquiry-based learning, and it's something I'm really not comfortable with, not familiar with, so it was definitely an eye-opening experience in that way as well. But basically what I tried to do is I took a written procedure for a lesson, and I tried to turn it into inquiry. And what that is, if you don't know what inquiry is it's basically like letting the students ask the questions and get them engaged in the learning, instead of me telling them what to learn or telling them how to learn. So they build upon their strengths and skills for that. So going back to this lab, I tried to turn a procedure into an inquiry where they ask the questions, and it kind of backfired on me, and I realized that I missed a couple things in the explanation, going back to clarity, which is something I need to work on. And I think knowing that now, though, I can try to fix that in the future, and I can say, okay, if I were a student, what would I think, and how would I handle that situation, and maybe try this sample a couple more times, or try to do it this way if I think a student's going to do it this way, and come up with the results there. So definitely a growing experience for me on that lab. It was something that I was kind of excited to teach, and then it kind of went downhill from there. But yeah, definitely excited to grow on that a lot more.
Further questions from the audience? Further questions from the panel?
Nothing about
And the last question for your final presentation, Miranda, is I'd like for you to describe how you believe you as a candidate could role model servant leadership to the profession during student teaching and your first year of teaching.
So how would I, as a candidate, role model service learning?
No.
Sorry.
Servant
Leadership. Okay. I think one of the things that I always think about as far as as being a leader is leading by example. And I know that maybe I don't have the opportunity to talk to a student about, hey, this is what you can improve on, but hopefully just the way I carry myself and the things and my morals and ideals and things like that, hopefully they can pick up on that and recognize that in the classroom. So I hope that they can see that influence and that they can take on that. And of course, I hope to be able to integrate that and teach that as I go along. But as far as maybe professionally, I think just engaging myself in any way possible, that taking advantage of those opportunities, going to workshops, going to, leading workshops, things like that, to show that there is a way to balance all of that in your life.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause.